Hey everyone, it is Thursday, 4th of July, around 10:15 a.m. and this is my fourth hike of 2019 in the Black Mountains of North Carolina. This is part of my ongoing attempt to finish the Black Mountains Hiking Challenge by the NC High Peaks Trail Association in this calendar year, doing a total of 7 or 8 complete hikes. My last hike was the second week of May, doing a loop around the Black Mountain Campground. Since then, I've been working steadily, as I've explained previously. And since I drone on incessantly in these videos, sometimes getting complaints, I'll try to keep this one shorter today. But I'm on track to finish in August, and since it's a federal holiday, I figured I wouldn't get too much work done sitting at home or at the lab. So I thought it'd be a good time to clear my mind for the final push, because sitting on the computer every day is very anxious for a hiker like me. So today I'm doing the Colbert Ridge Trail, Black Mountain Crest Trail, Big Tom Gap Trail, and Buncombe Horse Range Trail Loop, which I believe is the most difficult practical day hike in the Black Mountains. And when I mean practical, it's basically a route that seems reasonable to do with official trails without too much unnecessary out and backs or bushwhacking. Something where the trail miles aren't crazy, like 20 to 25 miles. And it doesn't require a shuttle, since this is a loop hike. And I also believe that the Colbert Ridge Trail is one of the most difficult trails in North Carolina. Everyone talks about the Woody Ridge Trail just to the north as the most difficult trail, but it is arguably the steepest trail in the state, steepest longer trail. That doesn't mean it's the most difficult. When a gradient gets that steep, it forces you to slow down, which helps you catch your breath and conserve energy. The Colbert Ridge Trail is slightly less steep, but it is longer and gains the same amount of elevation and just a mile longer. And I'm just getting to the beginning of that steeper gradient after an easy warm-up. And the last mile or so, as it rounds Winter Star Mountain on its way to Deep Gap, is just full of loose boulders and is a son of a bitch to hike up or down. So I've avoided this trail for the most part the last few years, but it's time to do the full version again. And beginning at Culbert's Creek Road, you gain about 3,000 feet on the way up to Deep Gap in 3.5 miles. And then from there, you continue climbing about 750 feet to the top of Potato Hill and a steep drop, and then climb up Cattail Peak and Balsam Cone, resulting in an elevation change of about 4,000 feet in 4.5 miles. And then from there, it's a long downhill, passing Maple Camp Bald. Now, this hike is going to be around 13 miles total and 4,400 feet of elevation gain. And since I'm getting to the tougher part, I'd like to end this segment and focus on my trekking poles, and I will get to the views soon and break out my map later. I've made it to the middle section of the Colbert Ridge Trail, where it starts climbing pretty steeply over a series of rocky knobs with some decent views. I'm at the lowest one right now, just above 4,000 feet, meaning I've climbed around 1,300 feet from the trailhead in about an hour and 10 minutes. So I'm on a decent pace, about halfway done with the miles on the Colbert Ridge Trail, but less than halfway done with the elevation change. The view is subpar compared to others in the Black Mountains, north and northeast of the South Toe River Valley. In the distance there is Grandfather Mountain, kind of shrouded in clouds. And that could be Big Bald of the Unica Mountains. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at my maps in a while. Normally I say this is a good place for a break, but today it's pretty hot. In Chapel Hill, it's close to 100 degrees heat index. I forgot to look at the temperatures in this area today, but I believe it's going to be in the low 80s with high humidity. And right now these rocks are just baking. So I'd rather stay in the trees until I get above 6,000 feet in elevation. This is only a few hundred feet above the previous rock, this time on the south side of the Colbert Ridge Trail, with a pretty good view south and southeast of the South Toe River Valley. I believe that rounded peak over there is Mackey Mountain. And up in there, deep in the valley, is the Black Mountain Campground with the pointy green knob and its fire tower rising above. This is generally the scenery you're going to get on the Colbert Ridge Trail. Never wide open, spectacular views, but you know, it's much better than just complete forest for 3.5 miles. And later on, I will be up there. I believe that's Maple Camp Bald. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get a view in this direction from Potato Hill or coming down the Buncombe Horse Range Trail, but if I do, maybe I'll be able to point out all these rocky knobs on Colbert Ridge. I have about a mile left on the Colbert Ridge Trail, and I've stopped for a snack break, so it's a perfect time to show you the map and the route that I'm taking. This is the USDA National Forest Service map I've shown you before for the Black Mountains, with a 1 in 24,000 scale. I'm not going to go into many details about it since I've talked about it numerous times. So I'm doing a big loop around the Middle Creek watershed, and I parked on Culbert's Creek Road at that P symbol, following the Colbert Ridge Trail, currently probably around here. And I've got about 1,000 feet left to climb to Deep Gap, and this is the toughest section coming up. And Deep Gap is the first good camping area for this loop. There are small campsites along the Colbert Ridge Trail, but they're not close to any water sources. Then from Deep Gap, I'm going to follow the Black Mountain Crest Trail south, climbing up to Potato Hill. And there's a steep, short gap between Potato Hill and Cattail Peak. And then it's kind of level all the way to Balsam Cone, which is not labeled on this map. And it drops to Big Tom Gap, following the very steep Big Tom Gap Trail down to the Buncombe Horse Range Trail. And there's a good campsite at that junction right beside the creek. And then hike out to Maple Camp Bald. Great campsites. And then it's about 6 miles on the Buncombe Horse Range Trail all the way back to the road. And then I have, I think, about a 3/4 mile road walk from the end of the Buncombe Trail. So it's a great loop, and you can see it's connected by a very short road walk, perfect for a big day hike or a weekend backpacking trip. Pretty close to Deep Gap. Whenever people ask about this hike, whether they're asking me or just general questions in the Facebook groups that I'm in about the water sources for camping at Deep Gap, everyone always thinks that the good water sources are on the Colbert Ridge Trail. And I always say these are very unreliable and very low flow. And this is just an example. I think this is one of 2 springs, and small drip coming off the rocks there. It's going to take a while for you to fill up multiple liters, and then you got to haul it back to Deep Gap. So if you're camping at Deep Gap, my best suggestion is to take the Forest Road west. It's a longer route, but it goes to the origins of, I think, one of the prongs of Cattail Creek, and that is a better spring and an easier hike because it is extremely rocky and wet on this side of the Colbert Ridge Trail. This is generally how the final mile of the Colbert Ridge Trail looks as you approach Deep Gap. It's just full of steep drops and inclines, large boulders covered in moss, usually damp. It's tough. Nice little rock outcrop in Deep Gap, and a preview of what's next. About a 750 foot climb all the way up to Potato Hill. Whew. This is a tough hike. I am finished with the Colbert Ridge Trail, hiking through Deep Gap. This is just before the Mountain Crest Trail begins climbing Potato Hill and enters Mount Mitchell State Park. And the trail split, the trail goes left, and this old forest road dives down on the west side of the Black Mountains into the Cattail Creek watershed, and that is the direction I suggest going for water if you're camping in Deep Gap. And when you enter the state park, dispersed camping is illegal. So this is kind of the main hub of camping for anyone who's hiking the Mountain Crest Trail. But the campsites are honestly pretty limited, and most of them are not very wide or level. This is the best campsite right here. Primo spot, nice grass, and you get some sun to burn off that dew. But the other ones are not ideal. And it's been occasionally thundering. I knew there was a like 40% chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon, but it's been very occasional, so I'm not too worried yet, but I am about to go up the highest part of this hike, so we'll keep an eye out for that. And I gotta say, you know, the Colbert Ridge Trail, I definitely believe that is harder than the Woody Ridge Trail after doing it again. After you do about 2.5 miles and get above 5,000 feet, it levels off for a bit, and you think that you're on the home stretch coming up to Deep Gap, but that last mile is brutal, even though it climbs about 800 feet, because it's just full of just boulders, steep up and downs, covered in moss, kind of damp, lots of roots. It is treacherous footing and just very difficult, and it's kind of like a sucker punch when you think you're almost there. So I definitely rate that as a top 5 most difficult trail in the state, and I've been on most of them. But right now, I've got my final big climb up to Potato Hill, and then it should be a lot of downhill miles from there. The other really good camping site at Deep Gap is also really nice, and room for 2 or 3 tents. But on a popular weekend, you gotta get here kind of early in the summer. I am almost to the summit of Potato Hill, and this is a really beautiful stretch beside the eastern cliffs of the mountain that are visible from the valley and the Blue Ridge Parkway. Unfortunately, the clouds have rolled in, so I'm not going to get any views right now. But I haven't heard lightning much, maybe once or twice in the last 20-30 minutes. So I'm not as worried about it as I was earlier. But things could change. So I'm going to try to get up and over this peak and try to finish the crest as quickly as possible, even though I'm really tired and slowing down. Top of Potato Hill, an unranked summit in the Black Mountains, but infamous for its steepness from both directions on the Black Mountain Crest Trail. There used to be a sign here. I guess someone stole it. Really cool view, descending Potato Hill, looking at Cattail Peak with the clouds rolling in from the east. The trail doesn't actually go over top of Cattail Peak. It's going to drop steeply into this narrow gap and then work its way around the west side, about 100, 150 feet below the summit. The southern Appalachian spruce fir forest on the west side of Cattail Peak. It's beautiful. Great stretch of trail here. The Big Tom Gap Trail is seriously treacherous going downhill. Holy crap, I already slipped once. It's just an erosion gully filled with moss-covered talus. And where it's sunny, the grass covers the rocks. You have to go so slow here, or you can get seriously injured. Finally, at Maple Camp Bald. And basically my hike is all downhill from here. The descent on the Big Tom Gap Trail was just brutal. Very difficult. Hard on my legs and a little dehydrated now, and I've been really cramping up. So I've had to take a break and take an energy gel and drink what's remaining of my water. But it's around 4:30 and got about 6.5 miles to go. Basically half the hike, but it's going to be trail and forest road downhill, and I'm going to put on my headphones and try to go as fast as I can. And since I've already shown you these views recently, I'll just do a panorama. Kind of cloudy today anyways. Not the best sight lines in the distance. But you can see there's a touch of clouds up there on Mount Mitchell. And Balsam Cone. So it's time to take the Buncombe Horse Range Trail down and probably push my way through overgrown grass and weeds for 2 hours. I am finally back at the Colbert Ridge Trailhead, and I am wiped. It took me around 3 hours to get down from Maple Camp Bald back to here. About 7 to 7.5 miles of hiking total, including this road connection. The first half mile of the Buncombe Horse Range Trail was very overgrown as I expected, but it actually cleaned up really nicely after that. I was very surprised. I do have to commend the NC High Peaks Trail Association for their work, because I did not encounter one blowdown for about 1.5 miles from 5,200 feet to 4,500 feet. But then once the Buncombe Horse Range Trail goes from a hiking only type trail to a forest road path, it gets a lot rockier, more wet, more moss on the rocks. Really hurt my feet, and it took about 2.5 hours to do that full trail, and it rained for the last hour and a half. So I just put my headphones in, listened to some podcasts, and toughened it out. Overall, this hike was around 9.5 hours. It's 7:30 right now. I will throw in some caveats. On the way up, I met a local on the Colbert Ridge Trail, and we talked for about an hour. And then around Balsam Cone, I met a trail runner who does ultra runs of 100 miles, and we talked for about 20 minutes. So without those 2 long breaks, the total hike was around 8 hours. Still long, longer than I expected. And after doing this again, 6 years later, it is easily a top 5 most difficult day hike in North Carolina, bar none, with both the steepness, the elevation gain, the length, and the footing. The footing is a killer. You know, a lot of other trails outside the Black Mountains do not have consistent, terrible rocks and roots like these trails do. So I enjoy it and I hate it at the same time. But I think about 6 years ago when I did this, before I was tracking and putting up blog posts, this took me about 7 hours, and I didn't feel as bad as I did now, but I was also playing soccer 4 to 5 days a week then, and I was 6 years younger. So I guess age and lack of playing sports has taken a toll. So it is a really good backpacking loop, and you can break it up a little bit easier doing that. But if you're going to tackle that, just give yourself 8 to 10 hours and bring a headlamp. It is that tough. So hope you enjoyed it and ready to get back and just fall asleep for 10 hours and maybe stop at a brewery if something's open this late on 4th of July. See you guys probably sometime in August.